Hello, I'm Annabelle McGillivray. I'm Director of Communications with the Australian Institute of International Affairs. I'm here with Chris Vine, former Deputy Chief Technology Officer with the White House and Chief Innovation Officer with the World Bank. Thanks for joining me, Chris.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Chris, can you tell me a little bit about your role as Chief Technology Officer with the White House?
So that role evolved because I had been Chief Information Officer in City County San Francisco, and what we did there in the city was really be one of the first jurisdictions to start looking at data that the government holds and what value that data might have if we actually released it in a format that hid as much as we could about the actual user or owner of that data, but actually could create opportunities for others to take that data and solve particular problems that we have in government. So San Francisco back in, 2008, 2009 started doing that. And through that process, I became known or got to know quite a few people in the White House. And they then asked me to take that experience and apply it nationally. And one of the things that I did was actually look at how we could integrate open data at the federal level, state level, and city level, so we could actually create amazing opportunities for development of solutions. Civic tech might be one of the examples, and really use that to solve a lot of problems that government wasn't able to do by itself.
So can you tell me a little bit more about civic tech?
Civic tech is really a growing industry, just like fintech in the financial services industry. And it's a group of people who really understand the value that technology can bring to government, but apply that value in a different way. They're probably more entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial, or maybe even have their own startups. And so what they're trying to do is take technology to solve government problems, but do it in a different way, an exciting way, using more solutions like user-centered design or agile technology development or lean business startup business tools, and actually focus on solving the problem in a different way, and by the way, make a little money at the same time. So I think it's an exciting industry because it's actually helping government solve problems in a different way that other much larger technology organizations or consulting companies just can't do.
So in that field, I'm sure there's a lot of data that comes online, that's brought online, as you say, and is perhaps integrated across different levels of government and between different arms of government.
Correct.
So obviously security plays a big role there.
It does.
So can you tell me a little bit about how secure we can make that integration at this stage?
I think nothing is absolute in the world, and so what we can do in government, and anywhere, is actually get as close to that absolute as possible. And when I was at the White House, my boss, as the Chief Technology Officer, actually did an amazing amount of work at the Department of Human Services, where he looked at all of that data that the US government had on health and all of the 8 to 10 different parts of the Department of Human Services, and actually figured out a way to anonymize the data in such a way that it was very, very difficult, if not impossible, to actually figure out who was represented by that data is probably the right way to do it. And did it in such a way that they, at the time, actually opened up the entire country's health record system to be open. And as far as I know, they did it in such a way that there never has been, if ever, actual use of that where they were able to back into who actually was represented in that data. So it's absolutely, I think, the number one concern of government, and it certainly was when we were in the White House. And we worried about this a lot. We thought a lot about it, and we tested it over and over and over again to try to come up with the best possible ways to protect it, and I think we did a pretty good job.
Obviously, convincing the public is a really important role.
Yes.
What strategies perhaps are best used to provide that reassurance, particularly when it comes to health, but in a whole lot of other areas?
Yeah, well, Todd Park was the gentleman that I was referring to, who was the second Chief Technology Officer in the White House. And he came up with an ingenious way, which was basically to take the data and go to the private sector and say, look what we are making available. I'm sure there's a way for you to use this to solve a human problem. What are the human problems you're trying to solve? How can we work together to actually come up with the solutions? And over a number of years, that proved to be a fantastically successful opportunity because, again, the focus was solving problems for the individual, but it was let's bring together public sector, private sector, citizen sectors, academia, whomever we needed to solve that problem, and let's experiment. Let's use the sandbox analogy or a lab or whatever, and let's really test this out and absolutely iteratively make sure that what we're building actually works. And I think by the time of the end of the Obama administration, it was so wildly successful that it's being copied in other countries.
So given the Obama administration is no longer with us,
well, it has come to a close. Yes, it has come to a close.
Much of it obviously still in
yeah.
their roles. But what I would like to know what you think this new administration, perhaps its approach to
That's
technology.
a really good question, and I think it's too early to tell. I think certainly from a private sector standpoint, Silicon Valley is very concerned for a number of reasons, visas and free flow of information and goods and services. And they have every reason to be concerned about that. If you look at it from a public perspective, one of the things that President Obama was very good at was the whole openness, the transparency, participation, collaboration of open government, but data and technology enabling that. And that does not seem to be the emphasis of the new administration, little things like visitors' logs at the White House and keeping those closed. So I think that early indications are that it certainly will not be a continuation of the Obama legacy. And at best, and at worst, they actually may retreat and become less transparent, which will make it harder for, I believe, the average American or even Australian to become active in helping to solve problems. And so if that's the case, I think we are all less able to trust in government, and I think government will have less capability of delivering the services that we so desperately need from them right now.
Okay, thank you very much for your time, Chris.
Oh, my pleasure.
And if you're interested in anything more to do with international affairs and digital development, please go to www.internationalaffairs.org.au or follow us on Facebook.